is Joy News Prime.
Indeed, this is Joy News Prime here on Joy News on Multi-TV and on London-based ABN Television, which is available across Europe. Thank you for joining us. Coming up, West African Gas Pipeline Company defers decision to slash gas volume supplied by Nigeria to generate electricity in Ghana's thermal plant. Meanwhile, the Electricity Company of Ghana is justifying why it believes consumers would have to pay more than 2 times what they are currently charged if they are to enjoy the quality of service they deserve. 106 staff of National Service Scheme dismissed for their alleged involvement in financial malfeasance.
And in business tonight, World Bank supports Ghana's Sankofa project with $700 million guarantee to solve the country's energy crisis.
And Otadamse will be here in the next 30 minutes with the details of those business stories. But also in the bulletin, World Bank President Jim Yong Kim, currently in Ghana to launch the bank's poverty eradication initiative, urges African countries to build systems for efficient revenue mobilization. Over the next 2 hours, we'll also bring you sports, entertainment, as well as your social media comments. My name is Israelai. Stay tuned. Thank you very much for joining us. And now on to our very first story. Governments must provide washing facilities for school children. That's the call from the head of brand development and activation at PZ Cousins Ghana, Hafsa Arthur, as Ghana joined the rest of the world to mark Global Hand Washing Day. This year's celebration is under the theme, Raise a Hand for Hygiene.
The Global Hand Washing Day is celebrated each year to raise awareness about the benefits of hand washing with soap. This year's theme, Raise a Hand for Hygiene, is a call to ensure that our hands are lifted above germs and dirt.
We try and encourage the use of soap, the use of water, proper hand washing techniques as a means to prevent certain communicable diseases which we find ourselves contracting every now and then. We chose to celebrate this day with the children of St. Teresa's School because we believe that if you catch them young and you build the culture in them right now, then as they grow, it becomes a part of them.
This year, Carix, a product of PZ Cousins, decided to partner about 10 satellite schools and organizations to celebrate the day by launching the Carix Handiworks competition. According to the head of brand development and activation of PZ Cousins Ghana, Hafsa Arthur, it has become imperative for more creative ways to be explored to encourage people to wash their hands with soap, and that's why PZ Cousins has decided to champion the social norm of hand washing.
Our goal here as Carix, as a brand, is to inculcate that social norm. We're also part of this global celebration because we want to bring attention to the necessary questions that policymakers need to begin to ask in terms of the facilities they are putting out there. Who is checking to see how many washing facilities are in the various schools, or whether the schools have at all? We have several schools, but who is checking to see if there's water, if there's soap? Who is checking what's going on in the canteen? We need the right people to begin to ask questions. We need parents to insist that certain facilities must be provided for their children. Indeed, it will be futile if we celebrate on the 15th of October every year the global hand wash, and yet there is nobody following up after that. It makes it all a one-day celebration, and that's the end of it. So we are continually drawing attention to the need to do this.
Now, the management of the National Service Scheme has dismissed 163 staff of the scheme for alleged financial malfeasance. The staff were dismissed after they were indicted in the National Service Board's disciplinary committee report over misappropriation in the management of personnel allowances in 2013-2014. A statement from the Service Secretariat signed by the Executive Director, Michael Pesa-White, reads that the staff, including 2 on retirement, would also be prosecuted and made to refund the monies they embezzled, while a decision on 3 staff serving as prosecution witnesses have been deferred. In the statement, Dr. Kpesa White noted that the dismissals are without prejudice to criminal prosecutions by the state. This is in line with President John Mahama's resolve to fight corruption and abuse of public office. It will be recalled that following the receipt of a report from the BNI earlier this year, the board of the National Service Scheme organized a disciplinary committee to initiate hearing of the staff involved in the ghost names scam, as required by the rules of the Public Services Commission, and recommend appropriate action. The president of the World Bank, Jim Yong Kim, is urging African countries to build systems for efficient revenue mobilization. Mr. Kim, who is in Ghana to launch the World Bank's campaign to eradicate extreme poverty, was speaking at a news conference at the Flagstaff House in Accra. He said inefficient tax collection needs to be addressed.
The Secretary General of the United Nations asked me and the other multilateral development banks to come up with an approach to funding the goals. Now there are 17 goals and 169 targets, so it's a huge, really $1 trillion a year agenda. And so among the things we looked at is where should we look to increase revenue to support the development agenda. The first was improved domestic resource mobilization, improved taxes in countries. Many developing countries have tax systems that are inefficient, but more importantly, that are not fair, that are regressive, where poor people pay taxes, wealthy people don't pay taxes. And so making tax systems more fair is something that we've committed to. And Christine Lagarde at the IMF and I have pledged to provide every country in the world direct technical support from us jointly to improve domestic resource mobilization. Now that also includes, of course, collecting the fair share of taxes from corporations. But leaders like President Mahama and others have pointed out that Africa suffers from illicit financial flows. And this is everything from elites and others who literally steal money and take it out of the country to companies that are not paying their fair share of taxes. Now this is going to require global coordination, but I think with the so-called BEPS report, Base Erosion and Profit Shifting report, what we've committed to is continuing to increase the transparency so that there are no longer safe havens where stolen money can be parked, but also transparency around who's paying taxes where. We really need to get that right. The transfer pricing problem you've talked about is a very real one. Now, I think what you see is in the major, for example, mining companies, Rio Tinto, Anglo, they have been very forward-looking and have published in a very transparent way what taxes they're paying and where.
In response, President Mahama said Africans are gradually taking their destinies into their own hands.
By Prime Minister Cameron to join together with President Alpha Conde and a few other African leaders to discuss exactly this subject. And I believe that we're seeing some positive signs that countries want to act together to be able to resolve these issues. Recently, Ghana has been accepted as the 50th member of the OECD Development Center and only the 9th African member. And these are some of the technical benefits that we can leverage using the Development Center. They have a very properly set up tax development policy unit, which they've offered to help us with in terms of tax reform, restructuring our tax systems, and making them more positive towards stimulating the growth of the economy.
Nutoko in the South Tong district of the Volta region are appealing to government to provide them with pipe-borne water. Though the community is located along the Keta Lagoon, residents would usually make an hour's journey with canoes to nearby communities to fetch pipe-borne water in gallons. They sometimes drown with their gallons. Joseph Opoku Gakpo visited the region for our documentary Jungle Poor. Here are excerpts.
In summary, Ghana's ability was missed, and Goal 8 on developing global partnership was met.
Out of these 37 indicators that we have monitored, our assessment has shown that at least we achieve or made significant progress in about 73% of them, which means that if you group the indicators under 10, if we take for each 10, we either achieve or make significant progress in 7, which is quite...
That's an A.
Yes, you can say that. And I think if you compare it to the global report, you can see that Ghana was far ahead in terms of achievement if we compare to other countries.
The first thing that has been acknowledged is that Ghana was the first country in sub-Saharan Africa to meet the goal to cut the rate of poverty in half. So this is to decrease by half the portion of the population living in extreme poverty, and they were the first to do that. So I think that's a great accomplishment that deserves a lot of credit and is a wonderful legacy for former Secretary General Kofi Annan.
But as Director General of the National Development Planning Commission, Dr. Nimoy Thompson points out, poverty is deepening in rural Ghana, even in the light of the success stories.
Analysis from the 2015 report has shown that
community along the border with Togo, residents live in poorly built houses, there are no toilet facilities, residents use communal bathrooms, and cooking is done in the open.
We don't have a school. The children have to go all the way to Menu to school. The children are suffering. Government has abandoned us. No water, no electricity.
School children have to walk long hours to school in the nearby community each day.
We find it difficult to go to school because we walk from here to Menu. It's very far, so we take about 1 hour 30 minutes to arrive at school. So before we get there, we are tired. So whenever teacher is teaching, sometimes we used to sleep when it was lesson in school. We don't have light, so when we come back from school, we have to learn before night catch. So when we learn small and night catch, we don't have light to learn again, so we sleep. Sometimes they give us homework too, we don't do. So when we go, they punish us.
But do you have water in this community?
Please no.
What does the water situation look like?
The place we fetch the water is very far. So when we get home, we have to go there and fetch water before we come up to learn. So before we go and fetch the water and come back, we are tired.
This facility is supposed to be a borehole that was constructed by the District Assembly for the residents of Achivikofe in the KJB district of the Volta region. Officials from the District Assembly came here about 5 years ago to begin the construction of the borehole. Several years down the line, this work has not been completed. What this has meant is that for the residents here, they need to walk for a duration of close to an hour to the nearest river source in order to get water to undertake their cooking, bathing, and other activities.
Now, Ghana's thermal plants are relying on gas from Nigeria to generate electricity are still running thanks to an agreement reached in Abuja between the Power Minister and officials of NGAS. The Nigerian gas producer has threatened to slash the volumes it supplies to Ghana through the West African gas pipeline if government failed to settle a debt of $181 million accumulated for previous supplies that have not been paid for. The General Manager in charge of Corporate Affairs at WAPCO, Harriet Rekoprobe, joins us on the telephone line now with details of the agreement that has stayed the intent to curtail the supply of gas. Good evening to you, madam.
Good evening.
All right, so what can you tell us about the arrangements concluded in Abuja?
I cannot. I can't tell you about the arrangements because they have not been concluded.
So at what?
And in fact, I am not. We are not privy because we are not part of the discussion. We are waiting for information, for formal information on it.
All right. So at what point are we in the negotiations, and what led to a suspension of the decision to curtail the gas?
Well, our understanding is that so far, the discussion has been progressing satisfactorily, but then it is still ongoing. And because it's ongoing, when you are having a discussion, you can't take a decision in the midst of the discussion. So pending the outcome of that discussion, the curtailment has been deferred. And there is an ongoing discussion. There are going to be meetings also next week. So what we are expecting, and those meetings will actually involve WAPCO, the meetings that will be held next week. So we are hoping that things will move on very well and that the conclusion will be satisfactory to all parties.
All right, we're getting reports about some 10 or part settlement of the $181 million that you were saying that had to be paid. Can you confirm that for us at least?
Yes, we've also received that information from NGAS that they have received some amount. I cannot be very, very specific on the amount. It's around the amount you've stated. But of course, we are not making the payment and we are not receiving the payment. So we can just tell you what we have been told.
All right, so what next?
Oh, you finished? Okay. No, what we are expecting is that the discussions will continue and that once it's concluded, we will know what is happening next. But while this is happening, with WAPCO, we are doing our job, which is the transportation of gas, and we are hoping that there will be a very satisfactory conclusion so that our transportation function can continue without any interruption.
All right, thank you very much, Harriet Reku-Brobe. She is the General Manager in charge of corporate affairs at the West African Gas Pipeline Company. We're taking a break. When we come back, we have more electricity talk for you. Please don't go away. You're watching Joy News Prime. On to the rest of our stories now. And the Electricity Company of Ghana has justified its request for a doubling of the tariffs charged its customers, explaining that the increase will help it eliminate the power outages that have plagued the country in the last 3 years. From a tariff of 17 pesos, it is asking for 37 pesos for each unit of electricity it supplies. The company has, together with the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, have been engaging stakeholders around the country in the last few months on the need for the increase, but on Friday stated its case in an advertiser's announcement in the newspapers. It argues that to rein in the current energy crisis will need a total of 38 billion cedis between now and 2017. Funds, it says, it cannot raise from the current tariffs. I have with me in the studio this evening Ebenezer Bading. He's an energy economist with the Electricity Company of Ghana, and he's going to be explaining to us why they think they deserve more. Good evening to you, Mr. Bading, and thank you for joining us. Now, you're asking for more than 2 times, essentially, for the electricity you supply to us. How do you justify this? You keep on saying that you need this to solve problems. But this is an argument you've always made, and yet you've not been able to deliver.
Okay, so let me take it from 2013. In 2013, we put forward similar arguments. There was the macroeconomic variables. There was the issue of low voltages, challenges with our network. And then we put forward a case for a tariff. In fact, we asked for 30 Ghana pesos. And then today we're talking about 35.5 pesos. If you even follow the trend, it follows a planned, carefully planned program of investments that will lead us to a particular solution. Now, ECG in 2013 through the past 3 years has been able to invest in the network significantly. We have third bulk supply point in Accra commissioned. Now, that's what that sought to do was to relieve the Achimota bulk supply point and then also the Malam bulk supply point. We were able to tie in the Tema network to Accra, offload power through Adringano. We put in the major substation to link up the Accra part. Now, when you take Takrady, Ashanti region, central region, we've been able to do a number of tie-ins. And then the exercise was to make sure that preventive maintenance and then routine maintenance works are carried out without the customer seeing any outages.
All right. I would want to find out from you. You're suggesting that you've done things within the distribution network to improve things.
Correct.
Would you say that the network we have now, or the ECG that we have now, is better than the ECG that we had in 2013 when you requested for the funds?
Absolutely. In terms of the distribution network, yes.
Is this something that you believe the customers can attest to?
Okay. So we were in Eastern region, for example, and from the public, they told us that you could see ECG addressing issues. But the major challenge we face today is unavailability of power. So a seller of orange, one second,
because I know it doesn't lie entirely within your purview.
Let me do a discussion. It's like a retailer going to the market to purchase goods, and you go and there's no show up. You don't get the trucks coming in to deliver goods. What do you do? That's the challenge of ECG.
No, we appreciate the challenge of ECG, that there's not enough generation available, and that's why you have to load shed. But I'm saying that despite the load shedding challenges, do you believe that you're a better ECG?
Yes, in terms of the networks, the distribution works we put in place. For example, Central Region. Central Region, now I can serve Central Region from Greater Accra Region, from Ashanti Region, from Western Region, because of works that we've done to tie in the grid.
At this point, I'm going to be inviting people to just get onto our WhatsApp platforms and our social media platform, Facebook and WhatsApp and Twitter as well, and let us know what the experience has been for you as far as the service of ECG.
But what I will say to you is that customers look at the power being on in the house, and that is really our assessment.
I'm sure they'll look at other things, such as when they have problems and they call ECG, how does ECG address those problems? And it's only fair. Now, one of the things you stated in the statement that you released today is that you're looking at essentially bringing in your own independent power producers, because if you can't get the power from the VRA, it's no excuse for you to say that you can't distribute. And so you're going beyond them to try and bring in power from others. You have a number of them lined up.
A number of projects coming in, yes.
And it is for these reasons that you're saying that you want the increase in tariffs.
Okay, so that is part of
That's part of it. Yes. If you don't get the increase in tariffs, you've signed these agreements with several companies, including Car Power.
Yes.
And you're expecting that they will pay, consumers will pay more so that you can pay Car Power and the rest.
Yes.
What if you don't get the tariffs you're asking for?
Then we must better go and abrogate them.
But you've signed the agreements already.
Yes, in fact, the clauses in there are conditions precedent. So some of the conditions, getting realistic rates, getting the support of PURC in this, and we gradually going through the conditions precedent in these contracts. Yes.
In all the things that you've written, I haven't seen anything suggesting that ECG is tackling internal inefficiencies that people have complained about. How are you addressing that? Apart from technical losses and all the rest, how about internal inefficiencies? Because without these inefficiencies being addressed, whatever funds are given to you will be sunk into this.
So if you look at there was a section called other projects. Now, other projects, we say same-day service, for example, that seeks to address meter applications. So today you apply for service, we must make sure that the same day we provide you the service. Now, this was implemented, we started 2013, and then 6 months down the line, we realized that there were material shortages all over. So we decided to decentralize the stores.
Material shortages, which I must say probably will be as a result of procurement inefficiencies.
No, unavailability of funds. That's the main issue. You need to contract these. We have credible suppliers. We can take phones and then ring them. We need help. Come in, and the next day they are
at the most efficient costs.
Yes, these are very, very. Even we can go through a list of some of these packages, and you will know that you can't get the prices anywhere. Now we use our size as ECG to be able to bulldoze our way and get some of these competitive rates. Most of them even come on credit to us.
All right, thank you very much. Ebenezer Bading is an energy economist from the Electricity Company of Ghana. We're not done talking electricity. We'll be speaking to the Africa Center for Energy Policy when we come back from this break. You're watching Joy News Prime, and staying with electricity, I have been joined in the studio by Ishmael Aka. He's with the Africa Center for Energy Policy, and he's going to be responding to a number of the issues that have been raised. First of all, good evening to you, Ishmael, and welcome to our studios. Now, let's start off with the fact that the Nigeria gas is no longer, curtailing, or for now, we're going to be continue to enjoy electricity, gas from Nigeria to power our thermal plants. How do you see the situation going forward? We're told that the government has paid about $10 million, the region of about $10 million. Do you foresee a situation where we're having to deal with this deadline again?
Yeah, I believe that what the government did was to present a payment plan and make a commitment. I think again... do
you have details of this payment plan?
Not officially, but we also heard that the Ghana delegation also raised issues concerning unreliable supply of power and of gas to Ghana and some of these issues. These are unofficial from unofficial sources. So we believe that we will not go back to the deadline issue. But if you remember, in August, the government asked PURC to come out with a plan to raise funds to pay debt of about $312 million. That involved the Nigeria and again the Ghana gas debt. I think PURC has not more like sent a proposal to cabinet yet. So I think that was one of the plans the government was looking at, to raise funds to pay the debt. They are trying, and we hope that we'll not go back to this situation again.
Right, moving from the Nigeria gas situation, let's look at the Electricity Company of Ghana and the arguments they're raising to justify an increase, and in fact, more than doubling of the tariffs we currently pay. Do you feel the reasons are justifiable?
Well, I think that when you look at the automatic adjustment formula, we have to look at tariffs. We have to increase or decrease based on the movement of certain macroeconomic variables. So the exchange rate, for instance, the cost of production, the margin we are looking at for them. Some of these things like the exchange rate is biting and it's not good. But I think the emphasis should be on collecting the debt. I've been saying this. I mean, if you are a company and somebody owes you more than $1 billion and you need money for investment, you are planning that for the next, I think, 2 to 3 years, you need $38 billion. And already one customer owes you more than $1 billion. I don't think increment should be your primary aim. The first one is to take that amount and probably use that to invest to get a stable system. Then you can argue for increment. So some increment may be okay, but 100% is just too outside.
They continue to argue that they're demanding the payment of these debts from government and the people who owe them. And you'd realize that in recent times they're on a power disruption spree, a disconnection spree, essentially, to get to retrieve these debts. You don't think they're good enough gestures?
Yeah, I think that they are trying. Last month they collected about 95 million cedis, which is very good, and I think they should continue. There are a lot of them they should disconnect. But again, there are certain inefficiencies even within ECG. When you look at Doing Business report by the World Bank, 2014, it takes 77 days to get connection to electricity in Ghana, whilst in OECD countries it takes less than 3 days. Now what it means is that it creates room for rent seeking, for connection men and some of these things. Even when you have 40 meters and you want to report, I mean, somebody may come and clear the debt for you for a percentage of the debt, not to ECG. And because the system is such a way that even if such people are caught, they are not punished. I mean, they are either transferred or some other, you don't hear about them. A whole warehouse of meters got bent, and what are we hearing about them? In February this year, there's this bus, a car they bought for 50,000 cedis. It got lost in Accra here at their headquarters. And as of now, nobody has been caught. No, I mean, some of these things, when you hear them and they are arguing that they still need money, I mean, it becomes quite disheartening.
Will these things justify government giving out ECG on a concession basis under the MCC agreement?
Yeah, I think that it is a very bold and good decision on the part of the government, but that is not the only solution. I think the government should be able to pay. I mean, when you have, as I said, if government pays, ECG can pay, some of the creditors can invest so that ECG may be, the ECG now is like a weak car, a car without a tire, and you want to sell on Tonaton. Somebody will come and give you 300 cedis. But if we are able to invest in ECG, at least reduce the inefficiency to some level, the technical and commercial losses of ECG in 2012 was around 27%. That is very high. Why don't we reduce some of these things to about 15%? Then if you say you are going to give ECG on concession, you can have a strong point to negotiate. But any person coming now knows that I'm coming to take inefficiency, I'm coming to take debt, and I'm going to give you some small amount, manage it for 20 years and come back. So the government should be able to pay some of these things. I think that even if we want to raise funds, we can, for instance, float about 10% value of ECG on the stock exchange to raise funds to pay some of these debts. And when ECG is on the stock exchange, what will happen is that they are governed by corporate governance principles, and ECG will be made to abide by some of these things.
But same way you're saying that the company as it is now is unattractive, you put it on the stock exchange, who wants to buy an ECG?
I mean, it has potential. The market is I think, is the official optica of Ghana. So the potential is there. Things are not good now. But I think that we know that if certain issues, corporate governance issues, so good management, not just, they have good management. The problem is political interference. If some of these things are seized, I think ECG will be better.
All right. Thank you very much, Ishmael Aka. Ishmael Aka is with the Africa Center for Energy Policy, and he's been speaking to us about the ECG justifying an increase in tariffs. In fact, they're asking for twice or 2 times what they're currently charging us. We're taking a break now on Joy News Prime. When we come back, we'll bring you business news. Please don't go away. Time for business, and Etonam Say is here. Good evening to Etonam.
Good evening.
All week we've been talking about gas from Nigeria and the fears that it was going to curtail the supply.
Especially for businesses.
Well, yeah. It turns out that the World Bank says it's going to support our own gas project.
Well, yes, that's the Ghana Sankofa project, so I'll be telling you all about it.
All right.
All right, now, the Ghana Sankofa project set to benefit 700 million in guarantee from the World Bank. This, the World Bank believes, would help fuel up 40% of Ghana's currently installed generation capacity, improve reliability, and replace pollution fuels with clean energy. The reform agenda, according to World Bank President Jim Yong Kim, requires a fiscal discipline regime. He was speaking at the launch of a report on poverty in Africa at Manchagbona here in Accra.
In meeting with President Mahama this morning, that he is committed to this reform agenda, and I ask all of you to support him as he makes the tough decisions that he'll need to make going forward. Only 1 in 3 people in sub-Saharan Africa have access to reliable electricity, and we know that lack of electricity has been found to depress business productivity by as much as 40%. Ghanaians, I've told, are very familiar with this problem. You have a name for the issue, dumso, I understand. And some of you think it's so bad, it's dum-dum instead of dumso. There's a company called Blue Skies, which employs about 3,000 people. It's a large exporter of fresh fruit and juices to markets in Europe. But when the power goes out, which happens almost daily, Blue Skies relies on diesel-powered generators to keep production going. And just this year, they've already spent $330,000 in order to keep their electrical supply going. We are providing $700 million in guarantees for Ghana's Sankofa gas project. This will fuel up to 40% of Ghana's currently installed generation capacity, improve reliability, and replace polluting fuels with cleaner, more affordable sources. Ghana will be able to reduce oil imports by 12 million barrels per year and CO2 emissions by around 8 million tons. Now, this won't fix the energy problem completely in Ghana, but improving the availability of clean energy is a very important part of the solution.
Welcome back to Joy News Prime. The president of the African Development Bank, Akinwumi Adesina, says that Africa's hopes of ending extreme poverty lies heavily on agriculture. To him, 67% of the fertile land available in the world for food production is in Africa, and Africans need to take advantage of that. He was speaking at a forum at the University of Ghana as part of the World Bank Group's campaign to end extreme poverty by 2030.
I want to say that agriculture pays. Look, if it doesn't pay, who drinks oil? Who smokes gas? Everybody eats food. Africa may not be able to produce airplanes, not yet, but Africa certainly can produce food. 65% of all the arable land left to feed 9 billion people in the world is not in Asia, it's not in Latin America, it's right here in Africa. You've got great sunshine, great water, cheap labor, you throw anything up, it comes down, it grows. So here's the point I'm making, is that going forward for agriculture, we must have agro-industrialization. There's no point Ghana, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Cameroon produce 75% of all the cocoa in the world. We get only 3% of it. Africa must process and add value to everything it produces. And Africa must understand that the size of this market in 2030 is going to be $1 trillion. And therefore, we must take it seriously as a business. Look, if agriculture doesn't pay, why is Africa paying $35 billion importing what doesn't pay? Importing food, right? And so the three things you've got to do. First, change the mindset about agriculture. I would like ministers of finance to recognize that agriculture is not something you leave to the Minister of Agriculture. No, it's central to how you actually manage an economy. Secondly, I want all the young people that are here to hear me very, very clearly about agriculture, because that's where the future is. Listen, you look in the United States, rich folks are all mostly farmers. If you look in Netherlands, richest folks there are all farmers. Because it doesn't matter what you do, you know, even doctors, I'm sure Jim will agree with me, will tell you, take 3 tablets 3 times a day, but only after food. You have to be after food.
It's time for entertainment. Ms. G is here. Good evening to you, Ms. G.
Good evening, Easy.
How are you?
I love this look.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
trying to look very different.
Yeah, you sure look very different. You do. You do.
All right. One of the things that we're going to be talking about this evening that I'm really excited about, it's today is a premiere of Beasts of No Nation.
Exactly.
And I've seen snippets of it. I actually
started
started watching it. And we actually started watching it. And we're going to be talking a bit more about that later on. But I'm sure you have other things also coming up.
Yes, I have other things coming up. Barima Osei Asare is still trending. A lot of people are still talking about him. And one man who is also speaking about him is legendary high-life musician Ben Bracco. Now, Ben Bracco says for him, he doesn't understand anything about what Barima Osei is saying.
So this is all about Barima Osei saying that he's no longer a pastor.
Well, he says he didn't say that. He's still a pastor who unfortunately can't quote any verse in the Bible, and so now he's doing both his pastoral duties and as well as playing secular music. So some people are even calling him Pastor Alewa, because the song he has with Sarkodia is called Alewa. But let's hear what Ben Bracco had to say about this move.
what is God's work? God's work should be about people. You know what I mean? I don't see how somebody can say they're leaving the secular world as if it's Satan's world and going to God's world. And, you know, I mean, it's all a nonsense of, you know, boxing things to the extent that it is not real. You understand? God's work is about people. You know, you can only serve God by serving people. So what's the difference?
All right, it's now time for sports, and Kwame Jomajamang is here. Good evening to you, Kwame.
Good evening, Easy.
So the European leagues are resuming, and there's going to be a lot of action after the international break.
Exactly. You know your sports, you know. You know your sports. You know your sports.
All right, I'm just hoping that, you know, Chelsea will come back to winning ways.
Would say.
Who are you? I mean,
you're playing Aston Villa. There's a weekend. Jordan Ayew's team, so. And they are in also very poor form. So
yeah, but at this point in time, anything can happen.
Well,
that's why
Chelsea these days,
yes. I need to pray. And all the Chelsea fans should be praying.
Well, we'll see about all that when we get to see the games coming up in the English Premier League later this weekend. But let's do some news on the local scene of the GFA Executive Committee elections may have come to an end, but the biggest casualty in there was the Vice President of the association, Fred Krenzel, who lost out to the ballot box. Now, one gentleman is putting himself in the fray for that job. He's Tema Youth President Winfred Osei Palmer.
Being the vice to the FA president is not a tea party. It's a Herculean task that calls for some mental toughness, that calls for some agility and circumspection on whoever assumes that role. It shouldn't be only based on loyalty. Loyalty counts a lot, but it shouldn't be only based on loyalty. The person's level of intelligence, how to think on his feet is very crucial, because decisions in football are taken at a glance. And to do that, you need somebody who is very versatile.
Right, and that's it for the bulletin. Before we go a quick round through our top stories, the West African Gas Pipeline Company has deferred the decision to slash gas volumes supplied by Nigeria to generate electricity in Ghana's thermal plant. Meanwhile, the Electricity Company of Ghana is justifying why it believes consumers would have to pay more than 2 times what they currently charge if they are to enjoy the quality of service they desire. That'll be all for the bulletin. For more news, log on to myjoyonline.com and get to check out some of the stories we have there. You have a great weekend. Thank you very much for watching.
This is Joy News Prime.